Thank you. Well, we're just going to follow the script, if you will, the agenda. And so we always pray first. But
sure.
So who wants to offer?
Pastor Valentine right there. He's been voluntold.
Oh, voluntold. Pastor, you want to lead us, Pastor?
He's our police chaplain and a long-suffering Mets fan, but not anymore. Tell us, Pastor.
You're a Mets fan, you have to pray.
Ouch. Mike, you're a Mets fan.
Good. Thank you, Pastor.
Let us pray. Father, we're so grateful for this beautiful day that we can gather here to discuss second chances.
Yes.
You are a God of second chances, and we want to have the heart and the compassion to open up our doors, our lives, and our minds to help these individuals recover and be restored, Father. Give us the wisdom that we need on this day, and we invite you to take over this meeting. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
And I think we're just honored that President Rose, who like I've had the pleasure of knowing for
A long time.
long decades now. And and since President Rose paid for the Dunkin' Donuts coffee and the 5 strollers, but I just wanted to ask him if he'd be kind enough to welcome us to this great edifice.
Yeah, we're glad to have everybody here. Just a couple of people asked, this is the old Hamilton Club. This was an old gentleman's club in Paterson, which the elite, the silk parents, all belonged here in the early 1900s. It actually burned down in the Great Fire of Paterson. It was rebuilt in 1906 for $50,000. The entire building, all the woodwork you see here. But this was a building that was restricted. Most of us who are sitting in here today would not have been allowed into the building when it was functioning at the Hamilton Club. So that's one of the reasons we love to have as many different types of people as we possibly can come into this building. And as the governor said, we've had the privilege of working here. He was my mayor when I used to live in Woodbridge years ago. And I remember when he was first running for mayor, I was having a barbecue in the backyard. There was absolutely nobody there from the town other than me. But he walked into my backyard, just like Andre would. Walked into the backyard, started talking to everybody there. Most of them were from out of state, but it didn't stop him. He spoke to everybody there, and it was his first time running for mayor, but he has been doing great work since he was mayor there, and got to work with him as governor, and he was great, and the work he's doing now is just so important. So we're honored to have you here, and honored to have our mayor here and our senator.
Thank you. And we're just going to we'll hear from our mayor and from our senator, and then we'll just go around the room and introduce ourselves. But I think, in terms of leadership, and by the way, I just, for the record, I think Mayor Sayegh is still on the payroll of the county college now.
Yes.
But no one has been, I just wanted to say, as a mayor, we have such a great partnership with Paterson. And I'm really just grateful, not only for his vision and his commitment, but his heart and working with people that have come through the system. And I don't know if many people know this, that the mayor was and is a volunteer with NJRC for many years, and would come during the week and volunteer and talk to our clients when there was no camera, and nobody was watching. And it's what you do in the quiet that reflects your soul and your integrity and your character. And he married very well. And he's got a wonderful family. He's got a wonderful team. Christian is amazing.
Yes,
Christian. I know. Christian and Carol are on the same. They're in the stratosphere. But I just want to say, the person who brought us all together, I just want to say, Mayor talked about coordinating our resources and integrating our resources between not only our benefits, MVC, or healthcare, but training and employment. Mayor?
Thank you, Governor. Let's give our governor a round of applause, please. REENTRY 2.0. Thank you, Governor. To our host, Dr. Rose, our partnership, our friendship extends over 20 years. And I want to give him a lot of credit because what he did is something very unique. As a result of his vision and leadership, we were able to hire 3 employees without having to go into the general operating budget and fund those positions. Those are Chief Data Officer, Chief Innovation Officer, and Aishia Hayes, our Director of Policy and Planning. And what I equate what has happened for the last 2 years, Senator, is that an X-ray has been performed on our society during this pandemic, or as a pastor this Sunday called it, the plague. And the X-ray showed that our society has a lot of broken bones that we need to repair or heal, Dr. Chapter. Those broken bones include low-income families. Broken bones include people that are struggling with addiction, and people who are trying to re-enter society but need those resources. And with the Chief Data Officer, we were able to launch a guaranteed income initiative where 110 randomly selected residents receive $400 a month for a year, and we're going to expand on that pilot program. Our Chief Innovation Officer applied for the Global Mayor's Challenge through Michael Bloomberg, his philanthropy. 631 cities across the world, around the world applied. They only chose 15. One of those 15 was Paterson. Dr. Jabin Ahmed participated in this pilot program called Real Fix, where individuals, Governor, as you know, who are struggling with opioid use disorder can call the hotline, get connected to a doctor, get the medically assisted treatment, and then we connect them to a counselor to put them on a path to sobriety. And we know that now we have to help people who have lost as far as something as simple as a driver's license is concerned. So our Corporation Counsel, Amy Noguchi, spearheaded a driver's license restoration program for anyone who's lost his or her license because of the suspension due to not paying a penalty. We help them get their licenses back and in most cases get their lives back as well. So our job after this X-ray has been performed is to help heal and help repair those broken bones. So thank you, Governor, for being a partner in progress in Paterson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to say about President Rose's leadership in the community colleges. So community college, for many working families, is the opportunity for a higher education. And President Rose, in terms of his leadership with county colleges, has been an advocate for those opportunities. So we're just mindful in terms of the importance of state investment in county colleges and what that means for working families who frankly can find sometimes four-year private institutions to be outside of the financial grasp. So President Rose has always understood the importance of accessibility and affordability. And it's a great honor to have Senator Poe because, you know, reentry wasn't always popular, and particularly the questions of juveniles. For those juveniles that may have committed, the people that we work with, felony murder at the age of 15. They didn't touch a gun, they didn't touch a weapon, but they might have driven the car away from the scene, never anticipating that a murder would occur, but then facing, you know, felony murder, they're facing a life sentence. And it really was through the indefatigable commitment, not only in the public health emergency, not only in terms of voting rights for parole and probation, not only in terms of reentry funding, but on what I consider to be one of the real causes of social justice. Young people, particularly young men, that go to prison when they're 14, 15 years old, when their cognitive abilities are still developing, and they're sentenced to 30 to life. And we see that all the time. Calvin Bass, with whom we work with. So one person, when it really wasn't popular, lifted her voice as a matter of justice and a matter of integrity. So in Trenton, she does this every day, but it's just, I just would like the folks at Paterson to know what a sterling, clear voice of strength and power on some of these issues. Senator Poe.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Thank you so very much for those kind words. Let me just say that I'm very, very happy to be here, Mayor. Your strong leadership and many of the work that you've done here in the city is certainly recognized, and I'm very happy once again to be some of my very dear friends, and certainly Dr. Rose, it's wonderful to be here and be here in this great institution. I just want, before I go on to talk about something very serious, although this, my point that I'm going to raise is going to be serious. The woman that did in fact broke the barrier to come into the Hamilton Club is a Paterson, or longtime employee of the Paterson, Susan Champion was in fact a member of this Hamilton Club when there was only a male-only thing. So I figure I'd kind of talk about that tidbit piece. But on the more serious side, thank you, Governor, for your comments with regards to the social justice and the kind of work that I have done. I have led and I have continued to work very hard for them several years now on taking on what most people would want to walk away from, taking on the issue of juvenile justice, taking on the issue of social justice altogether. The fact that we are gathered here today to talk about the reentry program and talk about the importance of that and talk about what can be done. I'm very happy to say that during the pandemic, and sadly, we all went through one of the worst epidemics we can absolutely think about, right? No one expected it. No one knew what to do or how to handle that. Government really, for the most part, really got tested, if you will, in so many ends. And one of those areas was really in terms of the correctional facilities and prisons. And the number of people that were in our prison population at the time, how they were going to be impacted and affected. And the fact that we all were fortunate enough to be in certain situations where we were able to adhere to some of those requirements because it just, the situation allowed itself. For example, social distancing, being able to wash your hands, drinking lots of fluids, taking on certain precautions. None of those particular requirements were going to be necessary or helpful or even possible for many of our inmates. Taking on that challenge and questioning and taking on the Department of Correction, which, Governor, you know, when you were governor, that was quite a task. But I decided that, and I felt strongly enough that that was something we needed to do. I'm happy to say that along with so many other supporters who felt that this was a key important issue, landmark legislation where I introduced a bill which is called the Public Health Credit, and that was really the first time ever releasing that. During that time, close to 5,300 inmates that came out of their prison sentencing early. They were ready, for the most part, met their requirement. They were ready. They did most of their time, but because of the epidemic, because of the health situation that we were in, two issues. Either they would remain there and risk their chances of them catching COVID and dying, because their sentencing was not a death sentence. Their sentencing was to do time for what they were in prison for, right? Or getting them to be in a place where they can absolutely be able to remove them, help not only themselves, but also help the correctional employees, as well as their families, and as well as our community. So it was, in my opinion, a no-brainer type of situation. I say, and I speak about it, it was signed into law today. Of course, we have clearly learned a great deal about that. There were some things we learned from that were needed, that we didn't think about, that today, if we're in God forbid, but if we're in that same situation, we know some of the do's and don'ts and what to do about that. And that's what happens when communities like us, like ours, like when stakeholders like each and every one of you around the table come together and work closely together. This is when we're able to really make that. So I'm happy to be able to speak about some of the very important, pieces of legislation, but we're not here to talk about my legislations per se, but it's really each and every one of you. Much of what I do and much of what has been done really impacts each and every one of you and the kind of work that you do in your line of business. So I'm happy to be a part of it, and I'm happy to be able to join you, Mayor, you, Governor, and Dr. Rose, and each and every one of folks that are around the table. Thank you so much, Governor, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for those words. So we're just going to go around. By the way, if anybody wants a job, there's the guy. So you can just introduce yourself.
Michael.
And Michael, just and your affiliation.
Yeah, that's fine. So Michael Paterson, AC, president and owner of Gator Recycling, located on West Railway Ave. We've been around since 1935. Currently, we employ about 240 people, majority of which come from Paterson, so we pride ourselves on that.
Thanks, Michael.
I'm Inga Spungan, Executive Director of the Paterson Alliance. We're a coalition of more than 90 nonprofits serving the Paterson community.
My name is Margaret Tucker. I work for SAYEGH County Board of Social Services. I'm the administrator for the homeless population.
Thanks, Margaret.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Oshun and I'm the management specialist at the SAYEGH County Board of Social Services. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Celeste. I'm the director of the Board of Social Services. I've been there for 9 months. And I'm thrilled to be part of this conversation.
We have the numbers when the Harrison will operate by the Paterson organization that's in existence since 2006. I do have to apologize because I was late because I was passing out applications for Habitat for Humanity job opportunities. So.
Hi, I'm Dr. Judy Ahmed. I'm the owner of Shipping Pharmacy and Medical Center. I own a variety of other businesses. I sit on the State Board of Pharmacy and I'm commissioner on the Board of Social Services. Also through my businesses, we have over 95% of our employees are Patersonians as well as minorities and women.
Yeah, thanks, Senator.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Senior Assistant Prosecutor on the Rocky for the SAYEGH County Prosecutor's Office.
Thanks so much.
Christian Caligieri, Mayor SAYEGH, Chief of Staff here in Paterson.
Mayor's Director of Housing Services for the City of Paterson.
Thanks, sir.
Mark Bing-Lawson, I'm the Executive Director of CUMAC. We're the anti-hunger organization right down the street from the Hamilton Club. We partner with so many of you over here, so I'm happy to be a part of this conversation, especially as we purposely hire from REENTRY program.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm Jessica Bennett. I'm actually Governor Greevey here in Paterson office.
My name is David Watson. I work with the Corporation Legal Services Project Manager.
I'm brilliant.
Thank you.
Appreciate the positive policy in Mayor City's office.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Eamon Abushi, Corporation Counsel for the City of Paterson.
Praise the Lord, and the chairman of the chamber.
Hey, Lou.
Mike Powell, I run the Million Club.
Better late than never.
I'm John Beckman from the city. Pleasure to be here. Really means a lot to us. Folks a second chance and really fighting for the industrial complex.
I gotta give Michael credit. Hold on, please pardon the interruption. I'm gonna take the point of executive privilege right now. Michael has spearheaded $800 million in investment in the city. Part of that includes each lift stadiums, the legacy project for the center and many. Yes, there are individuals from REENTRY that are working there at the site, restoring the historic treasures, New Jersey Field of Dreams.
Thanks, Mike. Also, clearly, I do go to the fan club. We also have a partnership with so the demolition that you see down the street is going to be a new masonry garage. It's a very important project that's tied to the train station as well as many other Canadian ones. So whatever we can do to line up, Governor and your folks who are willing, ready, and able.
Thanks, Michael.
I'm Kevin Dixon. I'm the sheriff with the SAYEGH County Sheriff's Office. I did work in the jail for 5 years. 1994 to 2019, and recently rejoined the Sheriff's Office January this year. And I was very involved with our very modest reentry program inside of the jail. So we did see the effects of recidivism over the years and the effects of not having really solid partnerships. So I'm happy to see the various stakeholders at the table, because that's the only way to really do reentry. All hands on deck. And we have to be very committed inside correctional facilities as well as outside the community. So I'm happy to be here and be a part of this.
Hi everyone, I'm the director of the Paterson Healing Collective. It's a community-based autism prevention program. I'm happy to say that many of our staff members are incredible messengers and people that are just involved. We're able to give them a career opportunity where they can make a difference in their community. So that's basically what I do. Before that, I did teach. This is a subject that's very near to me, and I was a probation officer. Corrections is very close to me, and I know that important things like this to create opportunities for our folks in the community.
Orlando Cruz, President of the
Greater Paterson Chamber of Commerce.
Executive Director of Special Improvement District.
As well.
Yes.
Vice President, Senator Dave.
And Treasurer.
Thank you. So what we want to do is to shape, and it was the mayor's idea, it was to provide for other integrated services. So I'm just going to flip number 2 with number 1, because MVC identification is so critically important. And you know this as corporate counsel and Damon. So part of this is that understanding, and we know this in corrections, we know this in the Sheriff's Department, we know this in the Board of Social Services, that ID is so important. So one of the real challenges, just bluntly, is for persons to have the MVC ID or the driver's license. And part of that is what we're trying to do in other municipalities, is increase awareness. And I didn't know whether you wanted to, or you want David to talk a little bit about what we're doing on IDs first? Go ahead, Dave.
Sure. I guess I can start very generally first. I came to REENTRY. I used to practice law in California. I was a corporate lawyer, entertainment lawyer. I decided one day to use my powers for good and said, I do this. I mean, I used to represent Activision back in the day. I don't know if you know what they've done lately, but it's a little sketchy. But but I didn't counsel them any of that. So I was totally entertainment based. But we do a lot of difficult things in IDs and in license restoration, and dealing with municipal courts. We do a lot of different things, but we have to do it with a certain level of humanity and with a light touch, because when our participants come in without ID or with things holding them back, they're stressed out, and they know how difficult this stuff is, and we know how difficult this stuff is, but we have to do it in a way that they don't see how hard it is for us to do. And we do a lot. Specifically with respect to IDs, we have a whole, I manage a team of legal services coordinators in our various offices. They come from various different backgrounds. We have a few lawyers, we have some paralegals, we have some very smart college grads, we run the gamut. And what we do is we are incredibly well versed with the motor vehicle 6 points social and proof of address system. I mean, like backwards and forwards. And nobody knows this stuff better than we do. And if somebody does, well, then we try to hire them.
Could you just focus in on, so Jim McGreevey comes out of Northern State Prison.
Yes.
What's the challenge?
Well, the challenge is, when you were in prison, inmate 24601, or McGreevey, you were supposed to have been able to get an ID and all of the social and a bunch of things, and you don't have it now. You have nothing. So we have to start somewhere. So generally we start with a birth certificate, because it is the easiest thing for us to obtain. If you have a county ID, which, well, actually, maybe we'll start with that. Just any sort of quasi-government photo ID that our notaries can use to notarize a birth certificate application. If you were born in New Jersey, we can have your birth certificate within 2 to 4 weeks. We have one of my team members goes to Trenton every 2 weeks with all of our birth certificate applications and gets them like clockwork. If you're born out of state, we use a service called Vital Check, and we'll get your birth certificate that way. And actually, you don't even need ID to do that. You just have to enter for security questions. So we start there.
So it's Paterson ID would be really critically
Yes.
important.
Yes.
And Paterson provides a Paterson ID.
Yep.
So it's not only having the Paterson ID, it's having the birth certificate, and then moving towards Social Security.
Yes. So with Social Security, we do have one way to get it quickly, well, fairly quickly. We create an account for you at SSA.gov. We do this for our participants, and if they can answer security questions, and if they actually have their ID number, if they, whatever state that ID came from, handy, we might be able to just order them and people look it online. And you know, Jessica, we just did this the other day for somebody.
Yeah.
So it's a very handy tool. However, if you don't have that available to you, we just need you to go get a doctor's note with your birth date and sign in with a pen and signature from the doctor. We send that to Social Security, or we actually now can send you down to the Social Security office with even a residency letter from a program. I mean, there's a lot of different things that they'll accept back up.
So maybe just in terms of how easy is it, or how readily available is it to access that Paterson ID?
Thank you, Governor. I don't know that that's something that the Department of Law handles.
Actually, Health and Human Services.
Yes.
So they come into the office, if they can come into our office, it's, the ID as per ordinance is $15, but if they come with a letter from a social worker that they are homeless or displaced or any kind of social ills that they're going through, I will make an executive decision to waive the $15, and our social workers will work with them to get them the birth certificate. We do have a contact in Trenton that Ed Bosey, our Chief Information Officer, got for us. So we will email the documents and we will have the birth certificate sent to us or sent to the social worker at the agency that they're working for, and we'll help them get the ID.
So would it be possible, say for example, maybe to have a joint letter from, at some point, Senator Poe and the mayor, just so that people in Paterson know that this is available to them? So when you're thinking about the numbers of persons that have Paterson IDs, what are the percentages you think?
There are thousands of people in the city.
Would you know, like, the percentages?
I'd have to
Okay.
look at the,
So maybe it's just making people aware of the ID? Does that make sense?
So you're just talking about putting it out there as an educational?
Yeah, so what's happening is,
Okay.
many of our folks don't have that initial ID.
Sure, no.
And so they don't have that 2 points. And so if they have that 2 points, they can get the birth certificate.
Yeah. So I remember when the photo or the Paterson ID program started, so if what you're saying is just simply for us to be able to put that information out there, we're happy to be a part of that.
Yeah, because I think that would be really helpful, because that's required. I mean, Board of Social Services knows that.
Yeah. I know we worked on a number of issues together, items with the mayor's office, and, with the city and the mayor and all of his department directors. So this is one area we're happy to also.
So it's just one area, Senator, that for us, we see that time and time again, people are coming out of prison, and the only thing they have is the NJDOC. And so if they would be able to have the Paterson ID, it would help us secure the birth certificate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And from the board, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
And do you do it in other cities in Passaic County?
Yeah, it's all in St. County we do.
No, but I mean, do you have local IDs in other cities in Passaic County?
I think Paterson's
We're the only one.
Patterson's the only one? All right, that's.
Governor, I'm just wondering, does the Paterson ID, is that acceptable in all other entities or agencies? For example, will that be a form of identification or a document that would be accepted at the Passaic County Board of Social Services, for example, or the Division of Motor Vehicle, or anyone? So I really, while
That's a
I
great question.
absolutely feel that the Paterson ID program is important, it may not be a document, an official document that would be acceptable or accepted by everyone. So I just wanted to put that out.
No, that's a great.
I can answer part of that. We use that ID or any municipal ID. I work in our Jersey City office, but I also travel, and I've been working in Paterson recently. We use that so our notaries can credibly notarize a birth certificate application. We have a very specific purpose for it. And actually, if they have an NJDOC ID, that's not only is that worth 2 points to motor vehicle, but we can also use that to notarize. But a lot of times they don't have it or they've lost it. because it says it expires in 30 days, and a lot of formerly incarcerated folks coming out, they see that and they just get rid of it or lose it or who knows. I mean, when you've been locked up, identification and credentials have a nasty habit of just bailing on you for no reason or any reason. And so if we can get them started with a municipal or a county, or like I said, just any quasi-governmental photo identification to enable our notaries to do their job and not risk their licenses, then we're good if we can get them first in. And that's worth 4 points out of the 6. Then a social security card, which you have to have, or you have to have a W-2 or 1099 with a non-redacted social, which is rare. But the social you have to have now. It didn't used to be that way. This last May they changed that. That's a point. And then if you have a health insurance card, which we help them get, or if you have a bank card with a Visa or MasterCard logo, which a Cash App card isn't good. I mean, we have partnerships with banks where we can get the bank. So we have a lot of stokes in the fire and a lot of ways that we can get around.
The point is, the point is, go ahead.
I just don't know, for example, the Department of Human Services, the person that oversees your project director, I don't know what kind of document Nellie Poe shows up to your office saying, I need an ID. How do you know I'm Nellie Poe? How do I prove to you that I'm Nellie Poe, and what can happen?
They do need to bring some other ID with a picture, even if it's expired, a proof of address, a bank statement. So there is a list of documents, just like motor vehicles, where it has 2 lists, or your passport, you need 2 things from this and 2 things from that list.
Sure.
So we work with them, and they don't have all of that.
And I just want to pick up on the senator's question. So if somebody comes to Board of Social Services with the Paterson ID, will that suffice for, say, for example, for a SNAP application?
Well, can I ask what is on the ID?
It's their picture, their name, their date of birth, and their address.
It could for the 30 days, the first 30 days, but they would have to get the other information. It might be okay for the first 30 days. They wouldn't have the social security number on it with the last 4 digits?
But this is helpful, right? So this is like, these conversations are painful, but they're helpful. So if we could, Christian, if we could follow up to go back to the senator's question and say for the first 30 days, by virtue of this ID, you can have SNAP benefits, and then it's our obligation to follow up to get the MVC identification in the subsequent 30 days, then that person's eating. And that's a game changer. So I think the first thing we do is, go ahead.
So when someone is released, is there a way that they can be released with some sort of document or a letter?
Yeah, well, they're supposed to, but it doesn't happen on the road.
So I think that's what makes it difficult to identify someone when they come.
We agree with you, that's why we're here.
That's why I have a job.
But to get an ID, even to get a regular municipal ID or any type of ID, you have to verify the person somehow, so even if...
No, we get that, but that's his job though. And he'll do his job, and basically that, and I respect what you're saying, but that gets into the weeds of what he's doing?
Not because of the Board of Social Services, it gets you 30 days, however, they have additional documentation to support that effort as well.
So what we'll do is, I think what makes sense is, we'll do it for the first 30 days based on the municipal, which was the senator's question, will the board represent it? And then in the subsequent days, we'll get the MVC ID. So in the subsequent days, we'll be able to get Social Security, and we'll be able to get those in the subsequent. And then you would recognize that as you would recognize anybody, if they have an MVC ID in 60 days.
Governor, if I may, there's also another advantage that we actually have here in Paterson, so that we were just talking about it outside. So for Paterson, the New Jersey REENTRY social worker team, they know to go on PUMAC's website. The Get Help button goes directly to me, and those clients come directly to us, and we supply them with food. We also have a benefits enrollment team that can work directly. So like the clock doesn't start, like we can supplement that, and we can bridge both gaps with both teams. My team, like I said, is from REENTRY, and they're from this community. So, our capabilities are at your disposal as well, so.
No, that's true, but I just want to follow up on the point you made in terms of the ID. So if you have to go back to Senator Poe's point, if you have the ID, the Paterson ID, you can get SNAP maybe for those 30 for those, but can you get GA for the first 30 days?
I'm not, just as an administrator, what happens is when they're leaving, when they're being released from jail, I normally get.
No, say state prison.
State prison, I'm sorry. So from the state prison, I normally get a call from the state prison saying that so-and-so is gonna be leaving May 1st. Prior to that, they have to put an application in on New Jersey website. They do that. And as long as I see that on our GUM system, my EA department will then reach out to the social worker at the state prison. We do an interview for EA, we place them probably in a hotel. And during that 30 days, they have what you call immediate need, they're eligible. But my question to you is if they don't have ID, but you're asking for a picture ID, bank statement, and all that, how do they have that if they don't have any ID?
Well, the social worker will work with them to
Okay.
see if we can find the other documents. There's a list that has a lot. See, and the senator can correct me, when this was first started, it was for undocumented individuals.
And the homeless.
Yes,
just
and the
to
homeless, so
identify.
that's why, and some of them do have passports from their home country.
Okay.
So they do have an ID, so we can work to
So
make
they're
sure.
okay with the GA for the 30 days?
So what happens if, and I appreciate your point about if it happens in the prison, what happens if they, behind the wall, the application wasn't done? So Jim McGreevey just comes out, Northern State Prison, I come back to Paterson, I'm knocking on the door. Can I qualify? So we heard, and I don't want to put words more, by the way, I appreciate your cooperation. We heard you can get food for 30 days, SNAP for 30 days with the Paterson ID. Can you get GA for 30 days with the Paterson ID?
I would honestly have to ask the state, but you have 30 days with your application to get the ID. So I would have to say on one side, yes, you could, but you still have 30 days to get an ID. So if they're working with you during the 30 days or prior to the 30 days, you come in with the ID, and then they would have to get the other documents, the birth certificate, social security card. and
So if we
that.
do that in 30 days, so the hard part is, and I really appreciate it, because this is, okay, I'm sorry, I do this in a lot of counties. We made more progress in 15 minutes than I've done in some counties in years. But so to get food, to get SNAP for the 30 days, and then, I'm sorry, the gal with the black sheet, thank you. And then we follow up in the second 60 days
Well, it's during the 30 days.
But the first 30 days, can I get GA as well as SNAP?
Again,
You're dancing, but that's okay.
I'm not dancing, I'm just, the 30 days, they have the 30 days, so if you have the application, see, I'm dealing with when they come from state prison, before they leave state prison, they already have put in a.
And I'm saying this is the case where somebody didn't apply while they were behind the wall.
Okay, then we would have to question why they did not go through the services with the state prison.
Okay, and say, I wasn't sure where I was gonna live, but and to be honest with you, the real world that we live in, overwhelmingly, it doesn't work as well as it should. Our guys and gals come home all the time, they lived in Paterson their whole life, they've never applied.
Or when they got the pandemic released, they got popped out. And they were like,
So, all right, so maybe we
They
can't.
show up at our door, maybe Hamilton, and have no ID. I do believe they can take an application. They may not get SNAP right away, they will be giving a notice saying you need A, B, and C, which would be an ID.
Okay.
So they may not get it the first 30 days that they have to go to Hamilton.
So that's where you're so important in the food, but our concern is, and the reason why we're doing this, and I appreciate the mayor and the senator, was in terms of GA and housing, the problem is there any way that we can help them meet that threshold for the first 30 days for GA? And maybe the answer is no, as painful as it is.
It may be no, it could be. They need ID, I mean, they have 30. Yeah, they take the application and the worker will not grant them until they show some form of ID. Nobody off the street could just come in and say that my name is Kane and Abel, can I want to apply? You have to have some form of something to say who you are.
So if I come in, and I'll drop it, and I'll get this. So if I come in, Jim McGreevey comes in, and I have the Andre SAYEGH vote for, excuse me. And it says.
It does have his name on it.
It does have his name, like.
I was gonna make Jose's on that.
Exactly.
You can tell he's out there.
Exactly. But so if I have the Paterson ID, when I walk into your office, I can get SNAP, but realistically, it'll be difficult to get GA. Is that an honest answer?
That's an honest, yeah.
So that's important. So that, the bottom line is that the city ID will get you food, and you're there as a backup, but it won't get housing.
Yes and no.
So, I mean, that's something, no, but that's something we can work on, and maybe something we can strengthen.
Barbara, why do you say yes and no? What's the yes part?
The yes
We
part
know
is-
the no part, we understand.
Okay, so
the
when
no.
the client applies, normally when they're from reentry, it's from the state prison that I get the list from every month. So if someone
may
just
I
got,
just pause-
yes.
ask you to pause for a second? What our experience has been, and I just heard
Damon.
I just heard Damon speak about that also. Our experience is that the Department of Correction, as much as they would like to, they're not doing that each and every time. So people are in fact being released from the population, and they're not able to have all of the proper documentation that helps them. They have, according to the law and according to their regulation, forget the law, according to their procedure, they're required to follow various steps before they even get out. That's written into the law. Our experience is that that's not happening each and every time. So we're trying to bridge the gap. We're trying to find out what can we do for those individuals that are lost in that particular situation, that are lost with that. So what happens is that right now we're working with the Department of Correction. I'm trying to identify different procedures and ways on how we can improve that without having to always write a law. I mean, and some of it is just common sense, right?
Amen.
But otherwise, the only time that they ever, well, I shouldn't say the only time, but okay, so I will say, the time that they will actually listen and find, and want to even consider sitting down rather than working on a silo, on a silo, is when we threaten that we're going to write a law. I do that all the time, and guess what? We get some results. Sometimes the bills have to go in because that's the only way that they'll do it. Otherwise, those 5,300 people that I talked about, they would never have come out. They would have been still in jail.
Amen.
But to your point, and by the way, I know that the GA program, there are very specific requirements, and you too have to make sure that those state laws are indeed, complied with. You have to account for those dollars, so we understand, I understand them just as much,
So can I just piggyback what the senator, so if there's some point in time that maybe just in terms of reentry, if we could, like we do this with MVC, if we could certify, if there's a way that we could help you document these persons for the purposes of GA, that would be helpful, to know what your threshold requirements are and help work. So we deal with the former Senator, who's the former head of MVC? Before Sue Fulton, under the Christie administration.
fellow.
Yes.
Spanish.
Yes. Sounds like 2 words, first syllable. Martinez. We have Ray Martinez, and so Ray Martinez worked with us. Thank you. It's good to be young. You remember. And Ray Martinez worked with us, and basically said, if you hit these benchmarks and you certify this person, we'll certify them for the purposes of MVC.
Well, okay.
So we don't have to do that right now, but would you be open to sitting?
We can they have 30 days to verify who they are, but Governor, you do realize that many of these clients that are coming out have used up their lifetime limits and they cannot be helped.
Yep.
Okay.
No, and I get that. If they've used up their lifetime limits, that's it.
Okay.
We're talking about like typically young guys that we're trying to stabilize.
Okay.
So we're not talking about the guy who's 45 years old. We're talking
And
about.
sometimes if they've already been on SNAP before, there may be ID we already may have.
Yep.
Okay, so.
And that's what we've done in other counties.
Right, so the worker and administrator on that part would have to inform the workers to look for prior IDs that we may have.
Okay, great. So that helps us on state benefits in terms of GA, in terms of SNAP. And then obviously, we're very much aware of Medicaid. Medicaid is so critically important, particularly for our clients that are, in terms of our clients that are on Suboxone. They need to be. And did you want to jump in on the ID?
I had a comment, but Dr. Charlie also had a comment as well, so.
Doc?
There's a couple of comments that I had, because we also work with people that are just as involved because they're victims of violence. And some of the things I've seen, especially with the city ID, luckily we've been able to give a letter, so that was enough for them, right? But it hasn't always been easy. So I hope that we can troubleshoot on that, especially with this conversation, because I heard you say that the social workers, it hasn't been my experience of seeing that with our clients. That's number one. Number two, we have used social services a lot with 211. And trying to get people placed. You guys know my name, because that really raised a lot of awareness about some of the issues that we've seen. And some of our victims of violence are also recent reentry clients as well that have just come home. So I hope that we can also troubleshoot that, because one of the things that I'm seeing is that I'm glad that New Jersey Reentry has a mode of getting them MVC ID within 30 days, but that hasn't been our experience. That has been that fast, right? So that 30 days might need to really be 90 days. I have a young man.
Or 60 days.
Yeah. We have a young man we just hired that he has an ID, but now he wants to get his license. Like even getting an appointment in MVC has been difficult. He has to go all the way down to Central Jersey because there's no appointments around here. So just to have a realistic time.
Yeah. Did you want to share what we do?
We have very good relationships with certain motor vehicle offices, and we're trying to get relationships more. In Jersey City, where I work every day, our site director takes folks down to Bayonne every Friday, without a limit. And we just have a special thing, and gets them to sit for the written exam, or to get their ID, or to get an exam permit. We also put on events with motor vehicle. We've done 2 of them now. The last one was in March. They brought 2 of their giant satellite-enabled RVs.
So maybe to do that, we bring up Steve, maybe as president of the college, we can invite with Senator Poe and the mayor, maybe MVC.
Oh, absolutely.
Paterson did one of these.
Yeah. Actually, I've been having MVC at my one campus every month since for the past year.
Yeah.
They've been coming up and doing an entire day there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we would need that at Paterson. I'm just saying, I'm saying with myself.
I offer them here too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we've got a little bit of a game plan on MVC identification. Go ahead.
They should take.
I'd like to chime in on this topic. I know we're talking about people who are being released from prison, but everyone, 99.9% of the people who are in prison start in the county jails. And my experience is that a lot of people walk around with vital documents on their person, and when they're arrested and we bring them into the county jail, we collect these documents and we put them in their personal property. And what happens is, when someone is sentenced to prison and they're picked up at the county jail, DOC will not allow those vital documents to travel with them. So we're creating a condition where people who had documents no longer have them because our system won't allow it. And then we put it just because that's their rule, that's a DOC rule. They'll only take legal paperwork for an inmate who's leaving a county jail.
So they'll only take the legal transferal from the county to the state prison. They won't take your personal legal documents.
Well, no, they'll let them take their legal paperwork
But not your personal
pertaining
documents.
to their case.
Yeah, but not
their driver's license, birth certificate, social security card is sitting in their personal property inside the jail. And if a family member doesn't pick that up within a certain period of time, it goes in the trash. Because this is something that we create. That's where
That's where the gaps are.
And that can be fixed.
Oh, it can be fixed.
Of course it can, because if the DOC would allow the documents to travel with the person, then you will have people who are going to be released with their own documents and they can't go to the jail.
What's really interesting about that is that DOC is required by law, the Senator mentioned, when you're on your way out, to procure those documents. The new ones, I guess, but they already destroyed the old ones, so now they have to get the new ones that they're not getting.
Yeah.
Which is, it's crazy, right?
It's really a simple fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will do it.
Yeah. But there should be the will. I mean, well, let me rephrase.
They're not.
So one of the things, and I'm looking to my chief of staff over here on the side here, just to take a note of that. That's something I was not aware of, and it's something that we can try to do and work on. I do have an upcoming meeting with the commissioner of DOC, and on several topics, right, the transgender piece, but this would be one of those topics that I would love to be able to, I had no idea that happens, and you're right, Orland, the fact that, you know, it starts somewhere, and we're the ones that start the problem, and then we expect everybody around the room to resolve it.
And then we also have where people have their green cards taken, and it's a disaster. Like a disaster. And just so you know, just Senator, this is like real, because when they take their green card and then they're wholly exposed, and then they come out of prison, they don't have a green card and they don't have ID, to go to your point, it's just complete vulnerability.
But as the undersheriff just talked about, what if they do not have family members? And there's and a lot of the folks that could be in question do not have family members or may not have. So especially within, you know.
In our jail in Paterson, we had proposed to the DOC that we could separate those documents into a separate manila envelope, that when the DOC comes to the pickup, they could take that manila envelope along with their legal paperwork, and they also allow a handful of commissary, as they describe it. So whatever a person can hold in their hand, they can take that, with them. But the documents, we take them at property, we itemize them, so the issue of collecting them is already done. What happens soon after they're collected is the problem.
If I may, when Senator Poe sponsored the legislation for the early pandemic release, after the fact there was a study about how many folks actually left with a motor vehicle identification, and unfortunately the DOC commissioner at the time informed us that although they were willing and ready to do that, and they brought mobile units to each location, they still needed to comply with the motor vehicle regulations, which were the 6 points. And so they don't have them. Those 6 points.
I love them, Carol, but you can't start like 2 weeks before you let out X number of thousand people, start to secure the birth certificate.
We know that, which is why the legislation was delayed at the governor's request by close to 6 or 10 weeks, something like that. It was, I don't remember exactly. And just so that the MVC would get their act together. That was the whole purpose of delaying it, otherwise they would have been out. But you're correct, we know what some of our flaws are within the MVC and getting that proper timing. What I was not aware of was that how those particular documents are not able to follow the individual, and then they're discarded if they're not properly picked up by whomever.
And even with the idea of a family member picking them up, some people, depending on the amount of time they spend in prison, that relationship can change over 3, 5, 10 years. So in some cases, that's not even helpful.
So we just have to move on our agenda. So did you
just something very briefly. I think we're all doing our best to come up with various solutions to this problem, and just sort of thinking outside the box a little bit. If someone gets arrested, their fingerprints are run, and very quickly we can identify who that individual is. But when that person goes to get an ID, it takes all these people at this table and untold people behind them to try to get them an ID. So maybe one thing that we could think about, Senator, in terms of a legislative effort, is allowing municipalities, social services, other sorts of institutions, the ability to run someone with their permission and consent to run their fingerprints at that location, and you'll know almost instantaneously who that person is. It doesn't have to have any more information.
Great idea.
And in terms of
Wait, this might be the first time corporation council. Remember, tax dollars at work. That's a great idea.
In terms of,
Find out how much it costs.
in terms of the privacy, because I'm also a big proponent of privacy and not having databases, you know, I'm sure we could come up with some sort of program that just identifies a person, name, date of birth, and then the municipalities will be able to use that as enough information to issue an ID forthwith. You're cutting out the DMV, you're cutting out a bunch of people, you're cutting out banks, you're cutting out all the, you know, the DOC, and it's sort of, even if the DOC does what they're supposed to be doing, this could be sort of a redundancy built into the system that allows someone to move on with their lives and not have to, you know, because if the police can arrest someone and identify them in a few minutes, why can't that person use their own biometric information to identify themselves when they're trying to move on with their lives?
I think that's really creative. We'll pursue that. All right, so in terms of federal and state benefits, we've talked about SNAP, we've talked about GA, we've talked about improving identification. We have a really 2 points. One, to the sheriff, to the undersheriff, thank you very much for having the whole notion of documentation, traveling with the person. And then I think the fingerprinting concept, that would appeal both to social services, to the state, and maybe, and I think that's a great idea. We'll look at legislation, see if California or anybody else.
California does something like that, like you can go into DMV, I'm from California, go to DMV, and if you need an ID, you fill out an application and you're good. The 6 point thing is.
So why don't we just look at that? Why don't we just look at that? And so why don't we look at that and send something to Carol? I just wanted next, and then we get 2 doctors here on medical and behavioral health care, so that, and we all know the challenges with, and I really want to thank the mayor, and I want to thank the senator, just in terms of the number of persons that are suffering from addiction, and specifically opiate use disorder, and hepatitis, and diabetes. So what we try to do is to link people to, obviously, to Medicaid, and then we work with St. Joseph's and a number of facilities. Part of it is that we work with Newbridge, we work with Turning Point, we work with a number of facilities. We just wanted to see whether or not there was any greater potential, particularly for some of our female clients, for OBGYN, for access. We're doing, candidly, a better job in Essex and in Middlesex for RWJ. We just wanted to see if there's any opportunities for OBGYN that we haven't explored. Doc, anything, any thoughts? Anybody have any thoughts?
In Paterson, we have the Paterson Community Health Center.
Yeah.
It's a Clinton Street. They do have OBGYN
Yeah.
services there.
Yeah.
So I think
We utilize them already.
We already utilize that.
Okay.
Yeah, what we were hoping to do is, like what we do at RWJ and what we do at Beth Israel is there's a women's center, so that it's not just you're walking in as a client with any number of clients, but we develop a relationship with a specific gynecologist. And so we wanted for a lot of the women coming out of Edna Mahan, they don't have a history of strong OBGYN, and so we wanted to see how we could strengthen gynecological services for our women in the Paterson region.
Do we have a Planned Parenthood that is still providing those services? No, but to actually do the OBGYN services, I'm not sure it's still being done. I know they had a clinic with that type of service, but I don't remember. I don't know. I don't think it's okay. So it's just more counseling and other types of procedures.
Actually, I was going to tell you that Passaic County, in coordination with the Essex County and Passaic County Wellness Center, and in collaboration with Berkeley University, is now trying to have an initiative for overall women's health, because that women's maternal health is a New Jersey problem. It's not specifically a problem just for people who are incarcerated. So a lot of money is coming into these initiatives, particularly. St. Joseph's Hospital has taken the lead in Passaic County for that, and they're probably a partner that you should have.
Sure, we love St. Joseph.
Yeah,
We love St.
Joseph.
Joseph. St.
You
Joseph.
should have for anyone who's coming out of the REENTRY program.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great place to start.
So we've worked with, we've got a great relationship with St. Joseph's, they're tremendous, but we were just trying, just candidly open to see if there's any medical entity specifically for women that could focus in on developing outside of the community health center, FQHC, OBGYN services. Because there's a specific need for these women. I mean, I won't talk about medical health care and incarceration, but it's a specific need for OBGYN. So just candidly, we just wanted to open to see. We're really doing well on mental health.
Yeah.
We're really doing well on psych. We're doing really well on medical in terms of St. Joseph's and on behavioral health care. Where we need just to be open, where we need strengthening is on the OBGYN side.
Have you looked at all with the partnership for maternal and child health?
In Newark.
Right, but
Yes.
they serve Passaic County as well.
Oh, and do they have a site in Passaic?
They just closed their site in Paterson,
Okay.
but they're working remotely.
Actually, piggybacking off of what Ing said and piggybacking off of what the doctor said, there are several efforts going on in Passaic County and in Paterson around social determinants of health and maternal health and women's health that we could do. Partnership for Maternal and Child Health, we just trained their CHW team on self-healing communities, and we're actually doing an event with them, a community event with them at our facility in June, so we could get more strategic about linking everything
so
together.
that for the woman in Paterson, so like in Newark, we had them literally going to an OBGYN. So what we were just selfishly looking to do is to have women in Paterson go to a gynecologist in Paterson to develop that relationship. So just candidly, we just wanted to open up to see if anyone knew of that opportunity.
We could also look at the mandate. I mean, I'm not going to call my name because it'll be like, Mark, why'd you call us out in that meeting? But there are some managed care companies.
Mark, you doing that.
Oh, I do, yeah. There's some amazing managed care companies that really do care and have amazing community-based people.
And they have Medicaid contracts, Mark?
Yeah. And so I think bringing them to the table, I mean, they're not here today, but like bringing them here, like they care, you know, and like, so I think working with them would really work too.
All right, if you could give us their names and we'll follow up.
Yeah.
There's one in the downtown area, right, I just can't remember the name of the managed care. But it's right there. Right, yeah, right where it's the.
America.
Yeah.
America.
Is it America? Oh, it is
Yeah,
America.
my Laura's wife.
Yes, America.
Yeah, dispensation.
Oh, it's America.
America, okay.
Yeah, right in the downtown.
And I told the great mayor that we'd be done by 1:30, so do we have 5 more minutes? Oh, no.
I got some senior citizens waiting for me.
Go.
Really encourage so much strategic alignment that's taking place right now.
No,
See, we get the right people in the right room.
This is great, and I love what the sheriff said, because it's something that I live with every day, and until somebody says it, and the senator hears it, it's like, we assume that bad things have to happen, and they don't have to. So that's, the last thing is on training and employment. God bless you.
All right, well, stay well. Stay safe.
Have a conflict of point. So the last week is, and do you want to just talk about how you attract employees to your business?
Yeah, so initially we actually used to work with staffing companies to staff the employees that work on, let's say, the back of the garbage truck, the ones that are physically dumping the garbage pails. And about 2 months ago, we were reached out to one of our bigger staffing companies, and they said their insurance company can no longer insure them to staff our industry specific because of the liabilities related to working on the back of a garbage truck.
I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
So we were working with a company called Workonomics, which was a staffing company. They supplied roughly about 50 of our personnel that works on the back of the garbage trucks, physically taking the garbage pails, dumping the garbage pails. They reached out to us to let us know that their insurance carrier would no longer insure them if they were supplying their manpower and labor to us because of our specific industry. The garbage industry and trucking industry, the liability is just through the roof. With that being said, the following week, I ended up setting up another company, which is kind of our own staffing company in a sense, but what it actually allowed us to do was pull people from these agencies and pay them substantially more money overnight because of the fact that we weren't paying these staffing agencies with their fees, their form of workman's comp. So it's actually worked out really well, but it's actually allowed us to train the personnel that much more. And we're seeing a big savings from a medical standpoint and injury standpoint, because these staffing agencies really don't take the time to train them properly for the specific industry they're going to be placed into. I mean, there was times where we would receive employees that were great.
So the employer, instead of using staffing agencies, and so often what happens is, but that's why what happens with the Chamber of Commerce is so important, is that we can develop relationships right between the Chamber of Commerce, between potential employees, and between employers, instead of employers always going to staffing agencies.
Yeah.
So more and more what's happening is during the course of COVID, people went to staffing agencies because they didn't have time.
Correct.
To whatever. So now as we're coming out of COVID, hopefully the name of the game is to do recruitment between employers and prospective employees.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously one of the most important impact, or the biggest impacts from COVID, is the employment aspect of it, where individuals either stayed off of working for so long because of the supplement that they were getting, and choosing either not to return to work, or with so many industries converting their business profile into work from home statuses, that pool of workers for the everyday type of labor diminished significantly. And I think that helping these individuals from a reentry standpoint to get the tools that they need. We talked a lot about the IDs and getting their credentials in place for social services, but it's the same conversation as far as getting employment, and they needing those same tools that they need to get those services. They need to get a job, but the pool of people, once they're past that stage to try to get a job, shrinks more and more every day, and that's really what we're hearing from a lot of our big manufacturers here in Paterson. And in the greater Paterson area, but even our small mom and pop shops. And I'll give you one prime example. Right here in downtown Paterson, we offer our local businesses to do sidewalk sales. They usually love that time of year because it increases their business up to 30%. And the first year we brought it back, post-pandemic, maybe more than half didn't participate in, because they didn't have the staff for it. So just individuals not coming back to work and just having a hard time finding. Obviously we know nationwide the trucking industry and how that has impacted. So there's definitely a great opportunity to bridge the gap.
So maybe just to pick up, if you could do something maybe with the city, and just maybe we could talk about doing a recruitment with employers and employees.
Job fair.
Maybe we do something with the senator and with the mayor in June, and we just invite something, so we have all of these businesses, and these businesses are crawling out trying to do direct hire as employee, as opposed to using this consulting staffing agency.
Are you providing them insurance?
Yes, we are providing insurance. So we would be interested in that form of partnership, in the sense that a lot of our employees actually become long-term career employees. They start off as a job and they visualize it as if it's just a job, right, working on the back of the truck. But we actually help them get their CDL, make sure their license is clean. We're constantly running their background checks.
And they become truck drivers.
Yeah, where they make
CDL.
a substantial amount of money by kind of sticking with us and learning the processes throughout. But what's great about that is, our industry specifically is essential. So whether they're working for GATA or the city of Paterson, where you guys pick up the recyclable material, once they get in with a company like us, they have a lot of movement and growth throughout our specific industry, because it's an industry that will always be needed. So they're taught work ethic and things that really go a long way.
So I chair the Senate Commerce Committee, which is responsible for the oversight, regulatory oversight, as well as insurance and banking. So the insurance end of that, and we're doing some insurance reform legislation. So this was not, it was more on the affordability end of it, in terms of making sure that we're able to do that. But this is a different angle, and I'd be interested in just learning a little bit more in terms of the differences between the insurance end of it from the staffing,
Sure.
what did you call it?
Staffing agencies.
Staffing
Staffing
agencies.
agencies
As opposed to the
versus
employers.
Yeah, the actual employer coming
So
in.
just to kind of see what the difference.
So the staffing agency, Senator, will staff all
No, I
five, yeah,
know what it,
yeah.
I know what their function is, I
Yeah.
just don't know what their.
It's profitability and liability.
Right. But so,
I get it, but I I didn't know those secondary
Yeah, market.
insurance
Sure.
marketing requirement
Yeah.
that
Right.
the gentleman just talked about with
Yeah.
respect
Yeah.
to what would be allowable in terms of coverage and what is not allowable.
So to your point, initially, we used to direct hire, and our carrier was New Jersey Manufacturers, and at one point,
Yeah.
say we had a hiccup or an issue from a workman's comp standpoint, from that day forward, they would no longer insure us if in fact we had employees that were titled that specific code, right? And that code pertained to them being a laborer that worked on the back of a truck. We actually lost NJM. We then switched to go to a.
Well, I'm happy because my premiums went down.
We got it back, thank God. But so we switched to a staffing agency perspective. We ran with that for a few years, and after gaining such traction with NJM, we opened up a subsidiary company where we hire the employees through there. It's closely held. They're part of the barbecues, they get all the clothing, they get the hands-on training, and they're part of the team, but they actually make, overnight, they got $4 to $5 an hour increases from not having to work for that staffing agency where I was paying a vig in a sense, right? And plus, they were in a state-ran insurance fund, so it was costing them much more than it was costing me to physically insure those specific employees.
So what we'll do is, with your blessing, and we'll drag in the good senator or the good mayor, is that we'll invite Carol, we'll invite employers, and most importantly, prospective employees. The name of the game is to jump over these staffing agencies and provide direct relationship.
And if I may, wearing a different hat, I see my colleague down there and the Director of Social Services. As a commissioner on the board, we see that gap with the clients at the Board of Social Services that are part of the training for the Welfare to Work program and through the One Stop. So these are the types of relationships and communication that need to continue because obviously the commerce industry needs the staffing and we have to put people to work, right, as part of the training program. So is there any way as well that we can bridge that, bring that in as well?
Yeah, I think hosting
and the training program.
Hosting, kind of a job fair, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Bringing in employers, but also having.
I would call it anything other than a job.
I'm using it as an example for just for this conversation here. Hosting an event that can bring in, right, the employers, but also the social services people,
Right.
and bridge that gap between it. But I think that we can definitely put that together with our partners, county-wide probably, not just Paterson.
Right, county.
No, we just care about that.
Yeah.
So I just want to know, when you get directives, is that when you get that big set of pearls?
So I just want to wrap up. I just want to say thank you to everybody. I want to say thank you most importantly to our host. I won't say you get what you pay for, but I thank you for the water. You pay for it. I know, but I want to say thank you seriously to my dear friend, President Rose. I want to say thank you to the mayor for allowing us to do this. I really want to say thank you to our senator for being part of, this is who she is, and I think we heard some really, this was good, because this was honest, this wasn't easy, which, if everything worked, we wouldn't be here. But I think we, on the federal state benefits, particularly on SNAP and GA, we heard the challenges on MVC. We heard what has to happen in those first 30 days in terms of what's permissible. I love the idea of the identification. So we'll look at ID and maybe biometrics. We'll send that something over to Carol. And then I think the sheriff was I've seen it happen with people actually that friends of Senator Poe and myself that with the green card, it's just brutal. So thank you very much. On medical behavioral care, we'll just look at the OBGYN piece is still outstanding. I think we've got some great partners and other places we really like a partner here. And then in terms of training and employment, we'll look to combine both training and employment and do something probably within the next 60 days. And then the last thing is, I just want to say thank you to everybody. What we'd like to do this, and I really want to say thank you to the prosecutor's office because it's really important that you're part of the equation. We'd like to do this like 3 times a year. And the whole goal is that, you know, on every 4 months, we sort of check in with ourselves, see what we've done. And if we don't get anything accomplished, we blame the senator for the legislation. But if that's all right with President Rose, that would be really good, just to see. And so what we'll do is I'll provide a synopsis, and through Christian, we'll send that out. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for your time. Hopefully, I was thoughtful and balanced in trying to navigate the different interests. And does anybody have any last thoughts? If not, Pastor, do you want to say a non-denominational prayer?
Let us pray. Father, once again we stand before you giving you thanks. We are here and organizing people's lives and futures. We just ask that you use us as instruments for your glory and to bless others. Amen.
Amen.